Welcome to the Wolf Connection podcast. I'm John Kalfa. Let's talk about some wolves. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Wolf Connection podcast. I'm your host, John Kalfa. Our producer, Stephen Rivera, is there.
Howdy.
Hey, what's up? We actually just got back from a hike with our next guest, our lead of pack behavior, and part of the pack services team, Renee Alfero. Welcome.
Hey.
How you doing?
Good. How are you? Happy to be here.
Yeah. Awesome hike. We just we hiked our two puppies, Daisy and Jax. They are not puppies that we bred here, just so we're clear. Two wolves that were dropped off to us, I believe, at 3 and 4 months old. Is that
roughly
about that? Yeah. So that was how long was that hike? I never know how long that hike usually is.
I have no idea.
Probably about a mile.
Probably
about
a mile, a little over a mile.
Yeah. So it's always good to get them out. That was a lot of fun. And it's actually a nice clear day today, which is surprising. So we got lucky with the weather. So Renee, just give us a little bit of background on you and kind of what your role is as the lead pack behavior individual here at Wolf Connection.
Great. So I've been with Wolf Connection for almost 10 and a half years now. So shortly after Renee Alfero, who now with the last name, you understand, is my husband. That happened in the process of Wolf Connection growing. So yeah, I've been with Wolf Connection since almost the beginning, through all the ups and downs and stretches and growths and all the different teams that have come through. And I have a background in animal training and management, and behavior and enrichment as well. And I'm able to apply that to our pack here, along with some veterinary technician skills as well.
Nice. Yeah. So you got a lot about, you're kind of like a jack of all trades, I feel like, in like that pack behavior and like trying to figure out how to, so I mean, like, what's the first thing? So, I mean, I'll just jump right in because this stuff is fascinating to me. So when Wolf Connection takes in a rescue, what is the first thing that you go to in terms of behavior and how you try to assimilate that wolf or wolf dog into this very unnatural pack that we have here?
Right. So a lot of assessment goes into just even the initial ask of an animal before we even say yes to it. So there's many sanctuaries across the U.S., but we're the only one that does the kind of human empowerment work that we do with the programs. And that takes a very specific, not like narrow bottleneck specific, but a specific type of animal that can fit into our pack. And because we are a full-on hands-on sanctuary, we're not a place that just has a massive amount of land and the wolves are just kind of out there simulating a wild habitat and have little to no human contact. There's a lot of human contact that happens here. And so a lot of the animals that do come, we just try to figure out, is our sanctuary the best sanctuary for them to be part of, with how much hands-on and connection we have, or would they serve better in a different environment? So we do work closely with a lot of sanctuaries across the U.S. to make sure that animals find their best placement. Once they're chosen to come here to Wolf Connection, it's a lot of assessment. I mean, knowing obviously the gender, any kind of background this animal has, the age. We do behavioral assessments. They come into initially our isolation habitats that help us just make sure they don't have any health problems coming in, nothing that they're going to be compromised or compromise our existing pack. So we do a whole health screening and vet check of them, any necessities that they may need, like spaying and neuter, vaccines, that kind of stuff, just to get them up to date. And from there, easily within anywhere from 2 weeks to 6 months is us learning about that animal, learning about their behaviors, their personality, where we feel they'll fit, kind of what their role would be in a pack, what's natural inside of them, and also just where they're going to be. I mean, when they come, a lot of these wolf dogs have never even seen another wolf dog. A lot of them are either the single animal in a home environment, or some of them have been in some kind of offset pack style of a roadside attraction or a fur farm or something. And so when they come to our pack, it can be very overwhelming. You know, we have a large team. We have, currently 33 animals on site, and it's overwhelming. You hear 33 other animals howling, and some of these animals have never even howled before. So that's even shocking for them, even though they're a wolf or a wolf dog. A lot of them have never even found what their voice is, not even knowing that it's inside of them.
Right, and that's the interesting thing about this pack that we have, because whenever we give any tours or we tell these kids or anybody that comes on the property, that's the one thing that all of these animals share, is that they all howl together. I mean, how is that? Is that an innate thing, like you were just discussing, that comes out with these wolves and wolf dogs? Like, how is that? Because a lot of people are fascinated with the fact that none of these animals, some of them will never interact with each other. They'll never be, one of them will be in the lower compound, the other being in the top part of the compound or in a different part of the property. And yet the one thing they all do is howl together. I mean, how does that dynamic come together?
I think that's probably one of the most fascinating and incredible things with these animals is, one, you have some of them that have never even howled before. I don't think some of them probably even knew that that's even what they were. Because sometimes these animals are in a home situation and people are trying to make them be a dog, or live into a domestic home environment that is not natural for them. So in a way, it can sometimes suppress their natural behaviors. Others, not so much. We do have quite a handful that came because they howled way too much in a neighborhood environment.
Yep.
But then to actually come into an environment where they get to actually share their voice with a bunch of other individuals similar to them. And they all yearn for that belonging. They yearn for that connection. They're pack animals that they have to survive to be with other animals. And that's why they're the apex predator. That's why, a pack of wolves is superior to cougars or bears. I mean, of course, a lone wolf against a bear or cougar is not going to win, but a pack of wolves, they're only hunters or humans. And so when they get to have that chance to be with another pack, a lot of them jump at it. They really want to find what is the best way that I can enter into this pack so I can be safe and secure and be a valued member.
Yeah, and we were talking with Teo in the first episode, just really about that connection. Obviously, that's a lot of what we do here, is that human wolf and wolf dog bond and connection, and how much that really parallels in our lives that we have. Obviously, the family structure, the social structure of wanting to have a pack or have a friend group or things of that sort. And how that dynamic changes when you come here, and I just had a floating question out of my head and I forgot. It was something to the effect of, when they get here though, how do we know, especially in the wild, and I think this is something else too. We always talk about pack roles, and you just mentioned that, is how you, as a behaviorist, and also with the pack services team, how do we discern, which animal becomes an alpha, becomes a beta, becomes an omega, and just sort of touch on, like, how is that discerned from when we get an animal that comes through our doors?
Mm-hmm. That's an excellent point. Really, the roles in a pack, especially with our unnatural pack, is very innate. It's within them. So, it's that whole nature versus nurture that has been an age-old, question. But in reality, it's really nature and nurture these days, that everything influences everything. You're born a certain way and you also learn things as you go. And if you work on yourself, they can complement each other. But with these animals, when we see an up-and-coming alpha, even when those animals, through their own process of healing, sometimes they don't exactly show who they are. They're not really stepping into their own yet because they're still learning how to let go and rehab from what they've come from. But a lot of the times when they do start showing us, we'll notice different characteristics, whether it's confident around other animals or it's one that kind of, wants to tell all the other wolves what to do if they're having too much fun.
Yeah, exactly. We know a couple of them that like that.
Another is just like calm groundedness. When there's anything stressful happening, you tend to notice the ones that move away and kind of become smaller, or you have ones that will stand up in the front, kind of be the warriors that kind of want to assess what's going on. And then you have others that are very nurturing to the ones that are a lot more shy. So you start seeing all these different behaviors pop up in these animals that start contributing to what their role is.
Yeah, and I finally wrote down what the heck I was going to say before. That's why I was, those of you, obviously we're in a studio or in our little office here and doing this stuff, so there's stuff around. And yeah, I mean, that's a great point because, like you were saying, and this is what I wanted to touch on before, is many of these wolves and wolf dogs actually come from a domestic situation, which for those of you listening, yeah, I mean, there are plenty of ways, unfortunately, that an individual can attain, a wild animal. It doesn't have to be a wolf or a wolf dog. I mean, tigers and lions and all this other crazy stuff that's going on. But in their situations, specifically to wolves and wolf dogs, what are some of the reasons why? I mean, they're not a good house pet per se. I mean, we say this all the time, but what are just touch on those things of why it's not good to have these animals, in your home, in your apartment, whatever it may be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I mean, these animals are completely man-made. First of all, I mean, there's not wolf dogs in the wild. This is a complete merging of the domestic dog and wolves together that humans had control over. And I think for some people, they like the thought of having a wolf as a pet, owning something that's so powerful, having that ownership of it, controlling it, commanding it, walking down the street and looking like a badass, down with a wolf by their side. And yeah, that's a great fantasy, but that doesn't mean that wolf or that wolf dog's going to have a good life with it. Now, I'm going to be honest. I know that there are some success stories out there with people having wolf dogs as pets. And from what I do know, those people, they change their lives for that animal and have habitats and I don't know what else, but the majority of the time that's why sanctuaries are here. They don't make good pets because people think it's a great idea, but they end up treating a wolf like a dog, and that doesn't go well because a wolf is still a wolf. Yes, dogs came from wolves, so they still carry some behaviors, but in a way they're a bit watered down. They're not as instinctual. They're not as powerful. They're not bred to serve man. They're not meant to be with us and necessarily listen to humans. They're their own individual. They know they have their own power. And just like the wolves here, when we work with them, it's all about the relationship and the bond. There's an equal level we operate on, a high respect of you're a wolf, I'm a human, and we have a companionship. It's never been any kind of ownership or telling them what to do or having control over them. When we hike them and leash them and go on enrichment walks, they're the ones allowing us to walk them, not us saying you're going for a walk.
Yeah, that's interesting too, because I know when I first started here 4 years ago, and it changed my outlook of just how I look at my 3 dogs that I have at home. Mm-hmm. And it's really just a different way of treating, even your animals at home in a different way, because they've all come from a certain situation. We have a couple of rescues, and it's anything. I guess if you're adopting, a shelter animal, it's the same deal. You don't know where that animal's come from. And I mean, it probably would be a better start if we just all started on an equal level instead of, trying to play that dominant role or that alpha role that many people like to play.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is at this point completely debunked. That's a military style of hierarchy that's not natural. And that's an interesting question people ask me when they come to Wolfheart Ranch and see the wolves and they see us interact. And when they see myself or another handler having this beautiful relationship and bond with a wolf, what's interesting is the human mind tends to not jump and be like, wow, look at your relationship with that animal. Is they jump to, oh, are you the alpha of the wolves?
Right, yeah.
And I mean, they totally go way off track of what's really happening in front of their face. And that's when I'm happy to tell people, like, are you kidding me? We, as humans, we do not fall in line with their hierarchy in any way, shape, or form. We're simply their caregivers, their caretakers, and their companions. Like dogs have been bred and made to be humans' companions. We're the wolves' companions.
Yeah, and it's interesting to take on that behavior. It's almost like we're doing a little bit of human behavior here as well, right? Because we're trying to debunk a lot of these myths and a lot of these tales and a lot of these things that we see, throughout movies and throughout, poetry and things that have come down for generations, obviously, about wolves and about, like you said, that militaristic style. And there's nothing against the military. It's nothing against the, their ranking system, just the way that we as humans, as we expanded across the country and saw these animals for the first time and seeing the little bit we knew about their packs at this point, what we thought and what we saw. And we it's interesting to see those things play out. Like you said, when people come here and to see hopefully their views change a little bit on that, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, so what, in that, obviously, we said that this is an unnatural pack, 33 animals from all walks of life. Some of them have, come from fur farms. Some of them have come from domestic situations. Some of them have come from, backyard breeders, severe abuse. What is that? What goes into really, and this is probably also, because you're on the pack services team as well, what's the assessment that goes into, an animal that comes in that way? If there's an animal that's severely abused, are they all treated differently? Is there a different steps that are taken for different varying degrees of trauma that they may have experienced?
I mean, for the most part is, sometimes we do know the severity of trauma that an animal came from. We know that animal had physical abuse and was tied to a tree with a wire embedded in their neck. And a lot of the times we just know that they were part of a fur farm for many generations. And that's like history, struck in their lineage that they're still carrying forward. And then sometimes we get animals that came as a stray into a shelter. And just by looking at the animal, you can only assume that there's some kind of neglect or abuse or something that happened. And, we don't necessarily always have the answers, but we do our best to get to know that animal and work with them and offer everything we can. So in reality, we have a great guideline of how we work with the animals, how highly trained our team is, how to properly socialize and get to know that animal and allow them to land here with the pack and on the property and just finally find their home. And just through that process is when we can start to understand them a little bit better. I mean, just like when you get to know a new friend or something, you have to go through some trial and error to really experience things together. Then you start learning about each other. So it's all about just time, patience, and offering respect right off the bat to these animals so that they can trust you back. And once you have that foundation, if you're listening and paying attention, they'll tell you everything.
Yeah, and it's something that I think as humans, sometimes we don't do that a lot. It's a lot of, pushing forward and, we know what's right or, and this is not for everyone, obviously, but, and the experiences here, I mean, I wouldn't speak upon them or we wouldn't speak upon them if we haven't seen them with our own eyes. And I think it's a beautiful connection. It's a beautiful relationship that, that happens over time, like you said. It's something that doesn't happen overnight. And I think that's a lot of the myth also is that, we're here for 5 days or a week or whatever, and all of a sudden these animals are curling up next to us in bed, and that's not how that works out. Just to rewind when we were talking about Jackson Daisy after we just got back from a hike, and when there was obviously I know this isn't a first for you. I know you've helped for any of those of you that want to go check out any of our wolves and wolf dogs, just go to wolfconnection.org. When we say names, you can actually put a picture or a face to a name when we talk about it. But I know Nova and Luna are two very special animals to you. Obviously, you've raised them basically since month-olds and different points and came from backyard breeding and abuse. What's the difference? I think, and this ties in with Jackson Daisy, as we got them around that same point, probably 3 or 4 months old, the difference of now having Jackson Daisy sort of really grow up here at Wolf Connection, as opposed to getting, an animal or a wolf or a wolf dog that comes here that's 5 or 6 or 3, that's kind of past that point. So what do you see as a difference in just having them?
Well, I mean, a huge difference is, first of all, it's super rare we get puppies in the rescue world because people, of course, that puppy time is adorable. They're these fluffy fur balls and you're super excited about having this animal. And then they grow into an adult with the power of a wolf and start eating your house. Or the neighbors complain or animal control shows up and it's, you find out it's actually illegal to have them as a pet. Is we get them when they're adults. When people can't handle them anymore, when people realize they're in over their heads with this animal and they can't provide the wolf pack style for this animal. And so with having the honor of, Luna came as a pup and Nova pretty young, even though she was severely abused previously, with Jackson Daisy is they know no different. So they came so young and instantly were able to be raised by the both nannies, Nova and Luna, and Grumpy Man Wyo as their uncle.
Uncle Wyo, we call him. Because
Uncle Wyo.
Trust me, if you see a 90-pound direwolf, jumping on, probably an animal probably half his size, I would say, you would be grumpy too. So go ahead, yeah.
So, it's fascinating to watch them. They're instantly thriving here, because they don't know any different other than love, other than attention, other than right off the bat being treated like the powerful wolf that they are, and growing up in a pack of other wolves and wolf dogs that equally treat them what they are. Nobody's trying to shove them in a box and make them be something that they're not, or fit into a lifestyle like a home or something that is just not natural for them. And they get to come and have open space and blue skies and learn the pack dynamics of the alphas, the betas, the nannies, the omegas, the hunters, the trackers, and they get to shine through who they really are. So, isn't that what we all want? Don't we just want to be right off the bat when we meet somebody for someone to just honor who we naturally are instead of trying to make us something we're not?
Yeah, we can all probably speak to that at some length in our lives, and I know when we have the programs, it's the same thing with the young adults and the kids that come here, because it's I think most of us can be put in a box, and like you said, raised. There are a couple of our male alpha Kenai. He was. If there's any dog in that wolf, I doubt it.
Yeah.
But taking an animal like him out and treating him like a dog, it obviously didn't serve him, and the amount of time and the length of time that it's taken him to get to that point. I think it's 8 years or so to get to be our male alpha.
Yeah.
It's just how do you and how do we as a pack really give them that time and space? Like, what's the goal for them to get to that point? And is everyone a success story? I think that's the other thing.
Our main goal is to give them the best life that they absolutely deserve here. And a lot of the times, we have 4 animals that came together from a fur farm recently, in less than 2 years ago, and that really didn't have any human contact, have never really been around any other animals other than ones of theirs that had the same coat color. All separated and just kind of thrown together. So when they got to come here and start being fed in a silver dish, twice a day, their proper amount of food, and have their water buckets cleaned every day, and their poop scooped, and have clean, immaculate habitats, and have people just simply go and sit with them and share their scent. Now those animals are laying in the front of their habitat. They're greeting handlers at the gates and coming over and saying hi and offering a little chin scratch or a scent rub. That's huge, and then for those animals to integrate with our pack and even become a habitat mate with one of our existing animals, that's also enriching, that they've been able to open up and bond into the pack, with another animal that didn't come from their situation. That level of diversity is pretty remarkable to see how they can be so different. One of the high contents from a fur farm is living with, one of our lower contents that looks like something out of Dr. Seuss. I'm talking about Ranger, who's mixed with woolly Malamute. So he looks quite interesting and unique. Mm. And they visually look like such an odd couple. But what's amazing is Ranger's been able to allow Ozma to come out of her shell more and not pace as much out of nerves and be more curious and actually hang out with the handlers in the front of her habitat. And that alone is making her life better.
Yeah.
So I want to go back to when we brought up, how wolf dogs don't make good pets. And I mentioned that, of course, in some situations it can, anything is possible, right? But for the majority, that's why we even exist as a sanctuary. That's why tons of sanctuaries exist across the U.S., is because there is such a high need for rescue of these animals. Anywhere between 70 and 80% of wolf dogs end up in a shelter by the time they're 3 years of age. And once these animals are in a shelter, they're given 3 days to either get a sanctuary or rescue to pick them up, or they're euthanized. So they're not animals that end up in a sanctuary and have the hopes of being adopted back out. It's kind of the end of the line for them. And a lot of them don't make it out, unfortunately, because most sanctuaries are full. Right now we're working on expanding our ranch and getting the funding to be able to take in more animals. But right now we're limited, to the pack we have. And with that, I mean, there's different behaviors that come up with that. I mean, there's a lot of escaping because these animals don't grow up in a pack lifestyle, in a home. For example, I mean, we've had some wolf dogs that, people had like a terrier or a Pomeranian as, the wolf dog's companion, which I'm glad it worked, something
Right,
so small
to a
and
degree.
fluffy.
Yeah.
But in reality, they really deserve, to be with a pack. I mean, even some of our lowest content, the owner would leave and that animal would escape simply to just find friends, find their pack, not to necessarily go hunt or go destroy anything. It's just simply that they're so insecure of being alone because they're a pack animal. I mean, in the wild, a lone wolf is on a time clock to either create their own pack or join another pack. Because like I had mentioned before, a lone wolf against a cougar or a bear is not going to win. But a pack of wolves is very protected and safe when they're in that kind of pack lifestyle. So there's this natural instinct to be with others for that kind of security and protection. And other behaviors, they're very destructive, as we know. They
Yes,
have
they
very
do.
big mouths, as we know. With
Max comes to mind.
Yeah, Max as he's redecorating his habitat, and Nolly, who, completely landscaped her habitat into a whole new, it was very jungly before she was in there, and she's got some shrubs left, I think.
Yeah. I mean, and just touch on too, the enrichment part of it also. Cause I mean, it's not, we talk about the destruction and, we can, share some stories too, and we will, in a minute, but, some of these animals are, digging craters in the back of backyards, making it look like the dark side of the moon, basically.
Right.
But it's, just talk about especially in the wild, I mean, the amount of stimulus and the amount of enrichment that's gotten in the wild, and then what we try to do here to balance that.
Yeah. I mean, their territories are gigantic, in the wild, and they have free run, obviously, to go wherever they want with their pack. They're smelling not only their pack scent, but other pack scent, other wild animals, predators and prey out there. The puppies and the adults interact and play, with each other within the pack. They hunt and they get exercise chasing down their prey. And lots of curiosity. There's footage out there of, wolves chewing on trees and sticks and, things just like we witness here at the ranch. And so we try to do our best to have, large naturalistic habitats. We work with the ones that are willing to come out on leash to train them how to go on a leash so they can go on longer hikes and get miles under their paws, so to speak, to travel and see different areas and smell different scents out there. And then also we rotate habitats as well. So the animals then get to, even though they don't necessarily not all the animals interact with each other, right, but we rotate habitats. So they're still howling together. They still get each other's scents. They smell each other out on the hikes as well. So just trying to keep it as natural as possible and enriching.
And that's one of the things I know that comes up when I host a tour is they'll always ask, what would happen if this unnatural pack sort of ran together? And I know that the answer is not good. Nothing good would really
chaos would confer.
So, but that's one thing too, because you've been to Yellowstone. You and Teo have been to Yellowstone a number of times, and I mean, so what's the push pull in terms of why? I think they have around like 1/8 of an acre in their habitats or something.
Eighth to a quarter. Some are a little bit larger. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a pretty good, decently sized space, and like you said, we get the animals out on leash that we can. But what is just the differences, obviously, with the animals or the wolves that come to us, and them not having sort of that free reign as opposed to the ones in Yellowstone or out in wild packs. How is it okay for them to be in these enclosures with us and not having to go, because it's been documented, they'll go 20, 30 miles looking for food. And I think that's the major reason why people would think they need the space.
Right. Yeah. I mean, when you look at any wild animal, whether you're looking at wild orcas, you're looking even at elk herds that travel, I mean, this is a big thing that comes up for zoos and other sanctuaries is, well, there's migratory patterns, of wild animals. But what people need to understand is that that's usually in search of food. It's moving from a freezing climate to a warmer climate to find food again, before winter. And that's why you have elk that travel thousands of miles in a migration. But if they're being fed every day, they don't have that need to travel as far. But here we still want to offer them that kind of space to dig their own dens and climb up the boulders and have cool lookout spots. And, sometimes the occasional squirrel or bunny is not the smartest one that ends up in a habitat.
Or lizards.
or lizards or, some of the bluebirds out here are not the smartest and adds a different level of enrichment for some of ours that still have those instincts. But we try to offer them that kind of space, that kind of interaction with each other, being able to go out on hikes and explore and really fulfill their physical needs, along with the social bonding of each other and the social bonding with us, that they're very curious about that and having that kind of connection.
Yeah.
Maybe before we wrap up, a couple questions that I'm curious about. What are some?
Are you curious, Steve?
I am. I'm very curious. Maybe you could share with us what are some residual behaviors that dogs might exhibit that are reminiscent of their wolf ancestors, but don't necessarily signal the same vocabulary, mean the same thing. Things that owners of dogs can look out for, just as like a,
Yeah. So, one of the main classics is, if a fire engine goes by with their sirens, someone's little chihuahua might howl at it, right? Or sometimes if you live in a rural area and there's wild coyotes out there, sometimes your dog might respond to the yipping and give some kind of little bark chuff howling attempt. Some are better than others, that's for sure. Another one is like scent marking. Like how lots of dogs lift their legs and they pee.
And they scratch with their paws. I know it's a big one, yeah.
So they scratch with their paws because wolves have scent glands in the pads of their paws. And so it's like a triple, this is my space, right? So they're peeing on something, that's their urination. They scratch in the ground, that's a visual cue. Because, man, can they move some dirt around here when they're scratching. And then they leave more scent in the scratch as well. So sometimes you'll see, someone's dog or your own dog, pee on something and maybe they walk a few feet away, they turn in a circle, and then they kind of kick their feet a little bit. It's not as intentful as a wolf because usually a wolf, when they pee on something, they scratch right there where they pee. So there's a lot of intention and purpose behind it. And so dogs still have that. But they might just not know exactly why they're doing it because it's a natural instinct. But there's really, at this point for domestic dogs, there's no purpose for it.
Right. Good. I know.
What about tail wagging?
Tail wagging, yes. So
yeah, please, give us because we'll
I just
try
think it'd be interesting for people who own dogs to see. I found it interesting when I first started coming here years ago. These insane gaps between what my dog's communicating by the same exact behavior
that a wolf would be communicating in a lot.
Right.
Yeah, that even these wolf dogs too, because that's another one that always comes up too, because people are like, oh, I have a dog and it wags and it's. So if you. We'll describe it as best we can.
I think a lot of people are so used to dogs that when they see the wolves, they're like, oh my God, my dog does that. But that's kind of putting the cart before the horse, right? Mm-hmm. Because dogs came from wolves. Right. So why would dogs not be doing what wolves do? And why would you not think a wolf could play? Why would you not think a wolf would wag its tail or whimper or lick another's face? Those are all natural behaviors. So, sometimes when I see the wolves do different behaviors, it's similar to what dogs do, but sometimes, man, it's like 10 times more intense, you know, like how they play and, their tail goes in a circle and it like wags and whacks their sides all the way around when they're excited or rolling under each other and licking each other's muzzles. It's all natural behavior.
Speaking of that, there's so much mouth play with wolves.
Yeah. It's just a lot of like sharing and tasting each other and sharing scent and having your saliva on me and mine on yours. And, that makes us even more connected. If we smell and taste like each other, then we're one.
Right.
Yeah. And it's something that we've all experienced. Like not the mouth.
No.
Well,
not right now.
But it just not right now. But even so, it's not one of those things where, the animals here, get their full tongues inside of our mouths, but it's something full heads inside. Yeah. It's just something that you see. Again, it's something I'm sure, have you guys witnessed that when you go, when you're able to go to Yellowstone. I'm
Oh
sure
my
it's something
gosh.
that's, and it's a natural thing.
It's so fascinating. I think that was one of the coolest things that I got to bring back, especially it was my first trip to Yellowstone, and we were watching the Junction Butte pack. They were like the star pack of that trip. And we got to see all their courtship behaviors and mating and the alpha female, the beta female, and the males and the puppies from the year before. And what was so remarkable is when I was watching them, I literally was just naming off the wolves that are here back at Wolf Heart Ranch. I was like, oh, look, there's Ayasha. Oh, look, there's Willow. Oh, look, there's Bo. Oh, look, that animal acts just like Coda rolling down the hill.
Wow, yeah.
It's just, that's what blows me away is that coming back to our sanctuary and seeing all these animals come from a situation where humans created them and humans tried to make them into something, either make them into a pet, make them into a coat, make them into a roadside attraction, whatever humans were trying to force them into a box, is it didn't matter because they were still wolves. They still acted like wolves. They still behaved like wolves. They still thought like wolves. They still treated each other like wolves. So no matter how much us humans try to force them into this little square that they can only be one way, is even it doesn't matter who in our pack, they all are still who they truly are, no different than their wild cousins.
Yeah. And I think, and I mean, to Stephen's point too, just, touch on the tail, because I think I'm always fascinated with that too, because there's, just the different position. I mean, what are some of the things that you would notice differently in a dog, let's say?
Oh
that
my
would,
gosh.
But even in our pack, there's a
Yeah.
complete difference between certain animals and how they use their tails. It's
Right.
wildly.
Yeah.
So what's something?
fluctuates.
Well,
wildly.
what's interesting is like I see when I go out rarely off of the sanctuary down the mountain, and I see dogs out in public, and I'm like, what is wrong with that animal? Because that dog is like head held high, chest puffed out, tail straight up in the air, like always making such a known presence about
Something's
itself. Like I've got to be big and whatever. And I'm like, dude, chill out. Like nobody's even looking, but that's what humans did to that dog, is that wolves, they're not about just flaunting it around. They're very relaxed creatures, and every physical behavior they do is intentional. If their tail's up, there's a reason for it. If their tail's down, there's a reason for it. They don't just carry their tail because they're just walking down the street, which I think is unfortunate. That was lost in a lot of our today dogs, domestic dogs. But we do see that, with our higher contents down to the lower contents, that's why sometimes like the higher contents don't live with lower contents, is because there is a bit of that wolfie to doggy gap, between them.
Just not.
Yeah, it just doesn't.
Fluid.
It's like a slightly different language.
Yeah, and I think, and that's actually, you brought that up too, and that's the other thing that we get asked a lot is, we don't genetically test. I mean, it's and it's really for the intention that we try to set with these animals, and coming from the situations they came from, is it's not going to matter to us or to Renee or to anyone here, Stephen, if one of our wolves or wolf dogs is a certain percentage. And I think, just going off that, I mean, what's the, and that's when we're saying high content. I mean, these are the first intro episodes, so we'll be saying language and you'll get used to it as you listen to us more, but high content meaning more wolf, mid content, basically 50-50, and then low content, more so dog.
Yeah.
But I mean, the reasoning behind that, not putting them in a box, right? That would be sort of the same situation.
Yeah, I mean, because all these animals are different mixes, and even if when you look at what we classify as high contents, they all have their different mixes, because they all came from different breeders and different dog mixed into them, so they all have different attributes. So we use a system that's well known called phenotyping. So really you're looking at the different attributes and characteristics physically and behaviorally with that animal over, time, that you can start picking like what is it of that animal and what content level it is. And look, like we're not here to say, oh, we have all 80% or we have all this or whatever. It's not about that. The thing is all these animals are wolf dogs. And all of them were in some kind of dire death situation that they were about to be euthanized or they had to come here. Our lowest content, lower content to high content, they were all on death row. So for here, it doesn't matter. They're all wolf dogs. And they all deserve to live. And they all deserve to be in this sanctuary. And they all express their wolfiness in different ways.
Right. And I think, to Stephen's point, before we wrap up, even if you want to just touch on, I think Kina is the best representation of that because, you can, delve into his story. You're talking about a male alpha wolf, I would say. I don't think he's, like I said, if there's any dog, it's very, very small. But coming from a situation that he came from and taking whatever it was 8 or so years to get to that point. So if you want to share even Kenai's journey, that would be great.
Yeah, totally. Kenai came from a very loving family who honestly tried and true to do everything they possibly could best by him. But unfortunately for them, they didn't really know nor could provide what a high content, almost full wolf really needed. And so again, with the love of their hearts, they knew that they needed to find him a different situation by the time he was 1. So they drove him all the way down from Oregon to Southern California. That's how committed. They still support him and come visit him anytime. And they just knew that was what was best. Instead of trying to force him into their lifestyle, they changed theirs and then found the best situation for him. And for Kenai, when he came, and this is no due part to his previous owners or anything, this is just his own process, is he was a bit lost. He was a bit shut down. He was never exposed to other wolf dogs, really. He lived with a collie, I think, in the house, his best friend that raised him. So when he came, like I said before, it's very overwhelming, for some of these animals that they've never even knew another animal like them existed, that they come here and all of a sudden there's like 30 more of them that speak the same language and look similar and smell similar and do the same behaviors, that in a way it's exciting because now like you're actually recognized for what you are and you can be treated the same and communicated the same, yet it's overwhelming, to take that all in at once. And he was just a yearling, so he didn't really know. So really over time, it just took him longer for whatever reason to trust people, to trust touch, to trust a leash, to trust for one of us to take him out. And he just went through his own process. Some of them are really quick within a week's time, are happy to get on a leash, and others it takes years. And we don't force it. We allow and just listen and keep supporting and enriching their lives and offering the opportunity because it's all their choice. Because trust me, if you ever try to force a wolf to do anything, you ain't coming out the other end winning. That's for sure.
No, exactly. Yeah. We don't force them to. We're almost like a broken record on these things. We don't force these wolves or wolf dogs to do anything. If they feel the need to stay in their enclosure, they don't want to come out on leash, we leave them there. If they want to come out for a hike, we'll gladly take them there. If they don't want to interact with individuals or people or us at that moment, we give them the space. And I think that's a beautiful thing.
Right.
And I think, Stephen, did you have anything before we wrap up? I know you were.
No, when you were
he
talking.
thinks very intently over there. That's
when you were talking, I'm waiting for burning questions. You know what I mean? Because you're covering everything. You got this. So when there's something like burning, I'm like, when you're talking about Yellowstone, I was curious if there were any behaviors that you saw that were different in the wild pack. Anything that like jumped out at you? I'm sure there's subtleties that we're not seeing, but. Other than the obvious, hunting elk part.
Yeah, I think, the obvious would be the mating and the courtship. We don't witness that here.
Right.
Our animals come to us as adults. They're all spayed and neutered for health and legal purposes. We don't breed. So, of course, that's not really part of our pack is the mating and courtship. Anything outside of that, when I've seen them eating, when I've seen them playing, when I've seen them resting.
Wow.
I think that was what struck me so much is how similar captive wolves and wolf dogs are to the wild, because all of our animals that we have, they haven't seen a wild ancestor for goodness knows how many generations. They're all born and raised in captivity, either sold as a pet or part of a roadside attraction or a fur farm or goodness knows what. So none of them have been taken in the wild. That's why none of them can go back into the wild because they were never there to begin with. Is that even seeing the wolves actually in the wild in Yellowstone, there really wasn't much of a difference, you know?
The instinct just dominates no matter what.
That's how powerful and sure of themselves and confident in being who they are.
Yeah.
It didn't matter if we're, they're sitting in a, shelter or tied up to a chain at a roadside attraction or living the wildlife or living in a sanctuary. they're still wolves.
Yeah, and it just comes out at different points, and it's awesome to hear that and see that, and really play out in front of our eyes and in front of you guys.
Yeah,
I think that's awesome. No, I think
cool.
yeah. I mean, the one thing I'm going to try and make this a staple every time. So before we end, is ask you, because you've lived the life obviously for a long time. Is when you hear the word wolf, what does that mean to you?
Goodness, so many things just popped in my head. Is this a one-word answer?
No, absolutely not.
Okay, good. Can't be. My God. When wolf comes in, is love, life, community, and we wouldn't be anywhere without them.
Yeah. I mean, I echo a lot of that. It's awesome. You're welcome back anytime.
Sweet.
You're clearly
to your own
office.
You're welcome to your own office anytime.
Awesome.
But yeah, I mean, we're going to be posting obviously some more videos and some more teachings. But if there's anything that comes up with the pack that we feel needs to be shared, please, you're obviously anytime you want to come on. It's awesome, and I love speaking the knowledge with you. It's awesome.
Awesome. Thank you. I love it.
Also, let them know. So just socials, if you want to, because Renee posts some awesome pictures all the time, especially with the nannies. You can follow along with Nova and Luna for sure. So just if you want to give them your socials if you want, it's up to you.
Yeah, I mean, you can definitely find me by just my name, Renee Alfero. I believe on Instagram, I'm at Renee Alfero 22. I don't use Twitter. But I'm also on Facebook on there too if you want to check me out. But mostly I use Instagram because it's just a funner, better way to be able to actually share photos and videos of the pack all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. And then obviously with ours, it's Wolf Connection, one word, Instagram, on Facebook. We're gonna be posting a lot of cool stuff lately. So Renee, thank you again.
Yeah,
awesome
thank
stuff.
you, John. Thank you, Steven.
Thank you very much.
No problem. That was awesome. Many howls to all of you out there, and we'll talk to you next time. Later.
Bye-bye.
Bye.